The marketplace stretched endlessly in all directions, an ever-churning sprawl of steel, neon, and desperation. Banners in a dozen alien tongues flapped from rusted beams overhead, while the scent of ozone and cooked meat mingled in the heavy air. Voices barked deals, music throbbed from open vendor stalls, and somewhere above, the station's fall sun pulsed on its artificial cycle. Cale moved through it all like a ghost. He kept his hood low and his head lower, steps practiced and smooth. The crowd parted for him unconsciously, reading the danger in his frame, the stillness in his shoulders. He was a man used to violence, but not flaunting it. A freelancer with too many ghosts and too few loyalties. Perfect for places like this, forgotten, teeming, unpoliced. He wasn't looking for anything. That's what he told himself. No contracts, no allies, no purpose. Just another nameless orbit, another failed system. But even he didn't believe that anymore. Something had brought him back to the Grey Bazaar, a trading hub buried in the wrecked belly of an ancient transport world. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't curiosity. It was the dream. Every night for weeks, the same image. A dragon, not massive and fearsome, but small, broken, and waiting. Wingless, bleeding, eyes dark with something more than pain. Cale had tried to dismiss it. He dismissed worse. But the vision lingered, like a scent in the lungs that wouldn't clear. So here he was, back on Orin 7, back where it all fell apart years ago. He drifted past spice hawkers and gene tweakers, past mechanical limbs dangling from cords and bottled starlight, sold as miracle cures. The deeper he went, the fewer humans he saw. The stalls became cages, not the kind that held animals, but the kind that whispered. He heard it before he saw it. A sound too quiet to belong here, too soft. A whimper, a scrape of claw against metal. Cale slowed. The stall was tucked between a merchant selling stolen memories and a booth offering biomods that would never pass galactic inspection. Its canvas was faded, unmarked, and the vendor looked half asleep. A squat, amphibious creature with translucent skin and lazy, rotating eyes. But Cale wasn't looking at him. Inside the cage, behind a flickering barrier field, was the thing from his dream. It wasn't large, barely the size of a mastiff, but its form was unmistakably draconic. Scaled limbs curled beneath a narrow chest, a long tail wrapped tightly around its haunches. But its wings, they were gone. Not folded, not hidden, gone. Torn, it looked like. Seared at the base. And it didn't look up as Cale approached. Just shivered once, then stilled. Cale felt his breath catch. The vendor stirred. You looking or buying? What is it? Cale asked, not taking his eyes off the creature. Defective bioconstruct. Dragon type. Probably spliced from some ancient genome. Lost its value when the wings failed. Doesn't respond to commands. Doesn't speak. Doesn't even try to fly. Just lays there. Where'd you get it? The vendor shrugged. Came in with a lot from the ether rims. Market dump. I take the unsold freaks and clean them out. Someone will want the hide, eventually. Cale's stomach turned. You were going to kill it? It's not alive, the vendor said flatly. Not like you mean. Bioconstructs are just flesh wrapped around programs. Expensive, obsolete pets. Look, you want it. 50 credits, and it's yours. I need the cage. Cale's hand had already moved to his belt. He didn't remember deciding. The credits transferred with a blink of his eyes. The vendor grunted in surprise. Didn't peg you for the sentimental type, he muttered, tapping the field's shutdown node. The barrier flickered out. Cale stepped inside before he could change his mind. Up close, the dragon was thinner than it looked. Its ribs shifted under too tight skin, and scars traced a map of pain across its sides. Its head lifted, just slightly, as Cale knelt. Two black eyes met his. Empty. Waiting. Cale extended a hand, slow. No sudden movements. The dragon didn't flinch. It watched. Then, without a sound, it leaned forward and pressed its snout into his palm. Warm. Alive. Cale exhaled. I've got you, he whispered. He didn't carry the dragon. It walked beside him. Slow, limping, but proud. Even in this ruined form, it held a dignity Cale couldn't explain. The crowd didn't pay them much attention. Too used to odd pairings, strange pets, worse things. They found a transport tunnel leading to the outer sectors, and Cale guided them down into the darkness. He knew a place, an old shuttle parked in a forgotten berth where no one bothered him. It would be safe there for a little while. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know why he'd done it. But as they moved away from the lights and the noise, something shifted in the air. The dragon glanced at him again. And for a moment, just a heartbeat, Kale felt something. Not a thought, not a word. A sensation. Recognition. It knew him. And worse, he knew it. The dreams hadn't been dreams at all. They were memories. And the story wasn't just beginning. It was coming back. Kale didn't speak as he moved through the lower wards of the market, his arms wrapped tightly around the dragon's frail body. The creature barely stirred, except for an occasional tremor that ran through its bones. Its warmth was faint, as if life lingered more out of habit than will. But Kale felt it. Faint, but there. That was enough. He found an abandoned alcove behind a curtain of decaying tarpaulin near the ventilation ducts. It smelled faintly of rust and oil, but it was secluded and, most importantly, warm. He laid the creature down gently on a thermal blanket he'd kept since his time on Titan 6. He unfolded his coat and laid it over the dragon's back. Ash. That was the name that came to him. Not for fire. There was no fire left in the creature, but for what comes after. Quiet, persistent, lingering. He watched the dragon, Ash, shift slightly beneath the coat. The ridge along its spine moved with shallow breaths. Kale reached into his satchel and retrieved a nutrient pack, cracking it open with a hiss. The scent was metallic, but it would sustain any oxygen-based life form. He scooped a bit out with his fingers and held it near Ash's snout. The dragon sniffed, recoiled, then paused. A long moment passed before its tongue flicked out and took the paste. Not poison, Kale murmured. Would be easier if it was. But no. Ash blinked up at him, eyes clearer now. Their color reminded Kale of old obsidian, dark, reflective, holding things unseen beneath the surface. He leaned back against the wall and let the silence grow. This wasn't the time for talking. That would come later, if it ever came. Right now, survival was the only goal worth speaking to. For the next hour, Kale sat vigil. Ash finished the nutrient paste and, seemingly satisfied, curled in on itself like a cat. The alien hum of the ventilation gave the moment a strange serenity. Outside, the noise of the market continued, muffled through walls and metal. A different world. Sleep tugged at Kale, but he fought it. Every instinct screamed to keep watch. He hadn't survived this long in off-world colonies and derelict stations by letting his guard down. And there were eyes in the market. Always. A faint rustle snapped him alert. Not from Ash, but nearby. Kale's hand slipped quietly to the sidearm holstered beneath his coat. He remained still, listening. Another sound, softer, skittering. Not a threat, not yet, but close. Then, a voice, small, childlike, yet strangely resonant. Why'd you take the broken one? Kale turned slowly. A small figure stood at the edge of the tarp, green skin, wide eyes, hairless. Not more than a child in size, though Kale had learned not to judge age by size in these places. He said nothing. They call it cursed, the child continued. Said it can't fly, can't speak, can't even fight. Others have tried. Didn't live long. Kale's eyes narrowed. You're not afraid? The child tilted its head. Should I be? Depends who you're working for. That made the child grin. Sharp teeth gleamed in the dim light. No one. I watch. That's all. Sometimes I warn. Not for pay. Just for the fun of it. Kale didn't relax, but he eased his grip on the weapon. What's its name? The child asked, nodding toward the sleeping dragon. Ash. That's not its real name. Probably not. But it'll do. The child knelt a short distance away, peering with open curiosity. It wasn't always like this. I saw it once, before the wings were gone. It made sounds, spoke like wind does, you know? Not words, but presence. Then someone clipped it. Tried to tame it. It stopped being what it was. Kale looked down at Ash, now sleeping more deeply. Why tell me this? Because someone else is watching too. Not like me. Not for fun. Kale stood. Who? I don't know. Tall. Covered in silver. Doesn't blink. Kale's jaw tightened. Where? The child shrugged. Behind you. Yesterday. And in the crowds before. They know you have it now. That matters. A chill passed through him, colder than the vents. He turned to Ash again, seeing not just a wounded animal, but a beacon, something people were willing to watch, to chase, to hurt for. Why does it matter? Kale asked quietly. The child didn't answer. When Kale looked back, it was gone. He muttered a curse and moved to gather his things. If he stayed too long, He'd risk a confrontation he wasn't prepared for. He secured Ash in a makeshift sling across his chest, careful not to jar its healing body. As he stepped back into the corridors, the air felt different. The market was the same, crowded, loud, alive, but now he could feel the pressure. Not from the crush of bodies, but from intent. Like walking through a room where someone's eyes are always on your back. He moved quickly, weaving between stalls and vendors, keeping Ash close. He passed creatures selling spines, memories, artificial emotions. In one corner, a glass dome displayed bottled dreams. A customer was crying as he paid. Cale didn't stop until he reached the outer ring, where the lights flickered less frequently and the structures turned to makeshift shacks and sun-bleached tarps. He found an old transport shuttle broken down and stripped for parts. The hull still held heat. Inside, he laid Ash down again and sealed the hatch behind them. Only then did he let himself breathe. Ash stirred at the sound of the hatch, eyes blinking open. For a moment, the creature looked directly at him, not with animal confusion, but recognition. The connection between them solidified in that silence. Cale knelt beside it. "You're not just some broken thing, are you?" Ash blinked once, slow and deliberate. Cale leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. "Then we've got a problem. Because something, or someone, knew what Ash was. And if they were watching, they wouldn't let this go." The dragon made a low sound, half purr, half sigh, and nestled closer into the warmth of the blanket. Cale sat there in silence, the fading hum of the market seeping through the metal shell around them. He closed his eyes, but not to sleep. Not yet. The night didn't come in the market, not truly. The artificial sky overhead only dimmed slightly, the lighting cycling through cooler hues to simulate rest. But rest was a rare luxury here. As Cale sat in the rusted-out shuttle, one hand resting on the pulse of the dragon curled beside him, the stillness around him did little to quiet the questions building in his mind. He'd taken Ash on instinct, not plan. There was a look he'd seen in the dragon's eye, something older than pain, more resilient than survival. That same look had stared back at him in the mirror more times than he could count. Not dead, just done hoping anyone would care. But someone else cared now. Someone watching. Cale stood slowly, careful not to wake Ash. He checked the door seals again. Secure, but not reinforced. If someone truly wanted in, this metal wouldn't stop them. He needed to move, but exhaustion was beginning to blur his thinking. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. His muscles ached, his mind was fraying, and now he was being hunted. He turned toward the rear of the shuttle and pulled open a storage locker. Inside, wrapped in cloth, lay his long-range communicator and the parts for a signal scrambler. He started assembling it quickly, fingers moving out of habit. If someone was tracking the dragon, he'd need to block every frequency within a mile radius. He didn't know what Ash was, not exactly, but whatever it was had drawn too much attention to be ordinary. As he worked, Ash stirred behind him. The soft scuffle of claws against metal made Cale pause, but he didn't turn. Not until he heard the sound again, louder this time, followed by a low, guttural growl. He turned sharply. Ash was standing. Shakily, yes, and hunched, but on all fours. Its back arched, the muscles along its shoulders trembling. Its wings, absent as they were, left jagged stubs behind, twitching slightly. Cale's breath caught. The dragon's eyes were fixed on the sealed hatch, black and gleaming. "What is it?" he whispered. A second passed. Then came the sound. A scratch. Then another. Metallic, deliberate. Someone was testing the door. Cale moved silently, drawing his sidearm and pressing his back to the wall beside the hatch. He waited, heart steady, gun trained. A shadow passed beneath the thin window slit, tall and motionless. No breathing. No sound. Then it moved again, too smooth to be human. Ash growled, low and guttural. The scratching stopped. A pause. Then the hatch began to glow faintly, as if being heated from the outside. Cale cursed under his breath and took aim. Whoever this was, they weren't here to talk. The glow intensified, orange bleeding into white. Cale fired. The blast cracked through the air, but the shot ricocheted harmlessly. The outer seal was reinforced after all, and now it was sealing them in as much as keeping danger out. He turned back to Ash. "We can't stay." The dragon stepped toward him unsteadily, but with intent. It wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Cale pulled open the floor panel and yanked free a rusted hatch. The emergency crawl tunnel led out beneath the shuttle, a maintenance route no one had likely used in decades. "In," he said. Ash obeyed. Cale followed, sliding the panel closed behind him. Just as it clicked, the main hatch above burst inwards with a roar of heat and twisted metal. He didn't look back. They crawled for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. The tunnel was tight and choked with old wiring and forgotten waste, but it was better than the surface. When they emerged, they were deep in the underlevel, a place few from the main market ventured. The air was thick with coolant vapor and rot, the floor damp and uneven. Cale checked Ash again. The dragon was limping but alert, its eyes scanning the shadows. They were safe for the moment. They found a disused service station tucked behind collapsed crates. Cale barricaded the door with debris and laid Ash down again. His fingers trembled as he reached for another nutrient pack. He hated this, being driven, cornered, but worse was not knowing why. He fed Ash, who accepted the paste more eagerly this time. Then, Cale sat back, head resting against a pipe, thoughts spiraling. Who had followed them? What did they want? Ash was no longer a curiosity. It was a target, and Cale had made himself a part of that. A whisper broke the silence. Not a voice, not truly, but a sensation, like words pressed into the skin instead of spoken to the ear. Not safe. Cale froze. He turned to Ash. The dragon looked at him with an expression that was different. Aware. He stood slowly. "Was that you?" The dragon blinked once. Then, again, the sensation, "They come. Not for me. For what I carry." Cale's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What do you carry? What was taken? What cannot be sold?" The words echoed through him like thunder underwater. It wasn't language, not in the way humans used it, but meaning, and Cale understood. Ash hadn't just been discarded. It had been sealed away, hidden, because it held something. A memory? A weapon? A consciousness? Cale didn't ask why it chose him. He knew better than to pretend fate had a clean logic. But he also knew that once something like this started, you didn't get to step back. You moved forward, or you died. Ash laid its head down slowly, its energy fading again. Whatever force had spoken through it, the act had drained it. Cale moved closer and placed a hand gently on the dragon's side. "I don't know what they want," he said quietly, "but they're not getting it." The dragon's breathing slowed. Cale stayed awake, watching the door, the darkness beyond it thick with threat. He wasn't sure who would find them first, those who hunted or those who watched. But one thing had become clear. He'd walked into the market as a man without purpose, just another shadow looking for something to hold on to. Now he had it, and he wasn't letting go. The silence didn't last. It never did. Even in the bowels of the market's underlevel, the grinding hum of machines and the distant echo of alien voices never ceased. Cale had come to accept that quiet was never permanent, just the breath before the next blow. Ash hadn't spoken again, not with words, not with whatever telepathic force had pushed into Cale's mind. But something had changed. The creature moved more fluidly now, its gait smoother, more confident. Its eyes, always alert, now seemed to anticipate. Cale could feel it, the shift from helplessness to awareness. The dragon wasn't healing, it was waking. He kept them moving. Staying in one place was too dangerous now. Cale had scavenged an old medkit and a reactive cloak from a collapsed trader's booth. It was alien tech, blended light and shadow that obscured form, but only barely. Enough to make them ghosts in the lower tunnels. Every few hours, he checked the comms. Still jammed. That meant the hunters hadn't stopped. Whoever they were methodical, relentless. Not mercenaries. Not scavengers. This was coordinated. He thought about what Ash had said, or conveyed. What it carried. What had been taken. Every possibility led to darker places. Genetic memory? Forbidden technology? A consciousness too dangerous to exist? In the outer markets, legends whispered about relic beasts, living vessels once used by ancient civilizations to preserve their greatest secrets. If Ash was one of them, then Cale had done more than rescue a broken creature. He'd stolen a god. They reached a decommissioned ventilation shaft, vertical, steep, but functional. Cale checked the schematics on his wristband. The shaft ran all the way to the subhangar levels. It was their best shot at escaping the market altogether. He glanced at Ash, who had already begun to climb, claws finding purchase in the narrow rungs. Cale followed, every muscle burning. The climb was endless, and more than once he paused, chest heaving, sweat freezing on his skin. Ash waited above him patiently, like it knew he'd make it eventually. They emerged in a dim maintenance corridor slick with coolant residue. The air was colder, fresher. They were close. Kale activated his wristband again, triangulating their location. If they could reach the port systems, he could find a hauler, maybe even a skiff. Anything that flew, anything that moved. But the signal spiked. 1 blip, then 3, then 9. Not from ahead. From behind. He turned. Footsteps. Dozens. Ash growled low in its throat. Kale grabbed its forelimb. Run. They sprinted through the corridor, their feet slamming into grates, alarms flickering as they passed old scanners. The way ahead bent sharply, then opened into a wide dock tunnel. Kale didn't stop to look, just kept moving until the end of the passage lit up with artificial day, the docking bay. He spotted a freighter at the far end, low-slung, old, but powered. Its side hatch was open. No guards. Likely a smuggler's ride or a junker's hauler. He didn't care. It flew. They ran for it. The first shot struck the wall to their right, spewing sparks. Kale shoved Ash through the hatch and turned, firing twice into the corridor. One figure dropped. Another advanced, shielded in sleek, black armor that shimmered with a violet sheen. Not market guards. Not local enforcers. These were collectors. The kind that bought history not for museums, but for containment. Kale hit the control panel. The hatch slammed shut. He turned to the cockpit, Ash beside him. The ship was old but responsive. He activated thrusters and override sequences, slicing through the lock codes. The engines roared. They lifted. The dock's ceiling shuddered as containment clamps tried to seize the freighter. Kale rerouted power, blew the clamps, and accelerated. Alarms screamed. Sirens wailed. The ceiling burst open as the freighter punched through a security gate and shot into the upper atmosphere. Kale sat back, drenched in sweat, every nerve still twitching. They had escaped. For now. Ash sat beside him, watching the stars blur past. The creature looked calm. Content. Kale wasn't. He set the autopilot and turned. What are they? Ash blinked. Kale leaned in. What do they want? Ash's gaze didn't waver. Again, that sensation, a ripple through his mind, like a voice behind his eyes. Not who they say. Not collectors. Not buyers. Keepers. Kale's stomach turned. Keepers of what? The lie. The words struck like iron. He didn't respond. Couldn't. He felt it now, not just in the dragon's presence, but in the atmosphere. A weight. A truth pressing in at the edges of understanding. Whatever Ash carried, it wasn't just dangerous. It was forbidden. They drifted beyond the outer rings of the planet's orbit. Kale turned off the main beacon and dimmed the ship's lights. They'd stay hidden until he figured out where to go next. But the galaxy was vast. The hunters were faster. He leaned back and let silence return. Ash curled up again, smaller than before, yet infinitely more. Kale watched the stars, his thoughts a storm. He wasn't just carrying a dragon. He was carrying the truth. And the galaxy would burn to keep it buried.